Hi everyone and welcome to EDTS240 Module 3 lecture. This lecture is going to cover some of the areas you probably need to know for the rest of to complete your assessment task. And if you haven't started on that already, it'll get you started. And if you have started, it will give you some new ideas for where you can go. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is one of the concepts we use for teaching technology. So if I have in front of me a bunch of teachers that I'm working with around developing some technology skills for them to use in the classroom, then I will always use this three-step process. So first of all, I'm going to direct instruction. So I'm going to show them and model them. So I'm going to step through and model what I want them to create. So say we're learning a new skill around how to put hyperlinks in a PowerPoint, for example, then I'm going to in front of them, step them through step by step. How do I do that? The next thing I'm going to do is guide them. So I'm going to say, okay, your turn now. Let's get PowerPoint open. And I'll probably step by step walk them through that process. So that they're doing it a little bit more on their own. There'll be lots of questions from them at this stage, and it will be necessary for me to kind of jump in and do some elbow to elbow support if necessary. And then the third step I'll do when I'm teaching a new skill, the third step is independent instruction. So I'll say, okay, so you head off now and do that yourself. I'm just out the front here. If you need me, don't forget to give me a yell. It's sort of like go off and do it while I'm here so they feel comfortable. And the reason I always enjoy this independent instruction the most is this is when I can get and do some, I can actually do independent support for people. So I can move around the room a little bit more and support groups. I can know that once they've done something on their own, they can then go back to school or go back to the environment they're usually in and do that work themselves. So direct instruction, guided instruction, independent instruction, those three steps to learn a new technology skill is a really good way to get people moving in that space. So remember that one. And one of the questions, so first question I'd like you to do for this portfolio today is, when have you participated in a learning experience in which directed, guided, and independent has been a flow of the learning? How did it help or hinder you to learn? That's your first question. So that's how we teach technology. The next thing I wanted to show you, now this is going to come up a little bit more next week, but it's a nice thing to focus on for a second. So when we talk about teaching technology in school, we have to always remember that we don't just teach technology, we teach technology in the context of learning some other subject areas. So we might learn to write, to format Word documents beautifully through creative writing. We might learn how to code something through learning how algorithms work in mathematics. We might learn how to make movies, learning about character and plot in English. So we always add our content knowledge with our technical knowledge, and then as a teacher, as we call it, teacher magic, our pedagogy knowledge, how we know to best teach something. So we're going to cover this, so you need to start learning about this TPAC concept of technical knowledge, content knowledge, and pedagogical knowledge. And if we just have a look at this little thing here, what I really like about it is that we've got here input and modeling, so that's directed. And then we're checking for understanding, we're doing guided practice, and then we're doing independent practice. So our concepts up here of direct instruction, guided instruction, independent instruction fit really nicely with a bigger picture concept called TPAC, which we see being used in various education settings across Australia. So we're going to talk more about this stuff in the coming weeks, but I wanted you to think of this, think of the teaching technology, and as you go forth and do your task 1 and you choose 3 30-minute activities, that you're thinking about this stuff. You're not just pulling in 3 random activities, that you're making a flow of learning and an experience that makes sense to your young learners' brains. All right. The next thing we're going to start looking at, and this is probably going to be more for your last unit, for your last assessment task, but it's really important. Another thing to consider, especially as you start talking in your justification 1,000 words of why you chose tasks against outcomes, is project-based learning. So last semester, you'll remember Jake Plaskett did a lecture around what is successful project-based learning, or PBL, yeah? Project-based learning. And the whole idea of PBL is that if you know your stuff, you're going to be better off for whatever sets of reasons. And the only way to get it through is through the teacher. You don't have to do that anymore. Today's content is ubiquitous. It's free on every internet connected device. It's growing exponentially and changing constantly. So when I see big quotes like this, I have to sit and think about it. And what this means to me is when I went to school, all the information came out of the teacher and all the information came out of the wonderful encyclopedias in the library. But outside my school, except for my parents and maybe people I spoke to, it was hard for me to get that information. So I was limited to what I could learn with what was in those books. Nowadays, students can learn anything, anytime, anywhere on any device they have, right? So you pull up your phones, you've probably all looked up TPAC already on Google or stopped this and had a look at a website. So we can get to anything. So therefore, we need to make the learning about inquiring and finding information and making sense of all this information. So now projects, and let's call learning projects, they're not so much about they're more about the doing and not just about the knowing. So next week we will talk about a concept called Bloom's taxonomy. And when we start doing our doing work, we're going to be hitting the top, and this is where we want to head when we're learning new things and creating things. When we're doing and creating, we're learning more, and we're taking facts and applying them in the context of new concepts. And this is where the magic spot happens for students. If we're just learning facts and going bleh onto a piece of paper, then yes, we're remembering them, yes, we're learning them, but are we really learning them to apply in new contexts that may be brought to us? So the keys to a good project-based learning project, and indeed you may start thinking of these things as you're choosing your 3 tasks, is that you can differentiate it. So you can make sure that some students have not different sets of outcomes, they're still the same outcomes, but they're achieving them in slightly different ways to suit their individual needs. That each student has choice and variety in their final product. So if you, for example, I remember you guys have probably had this too, whereas at school where you used to get given an assignment that was like create a 6-page PowerPoint, and on the first page you need to have this, and on the second page you need to have this. There's no decisions for kids to make with those topics. So you need to step back as a teacher and give choices to students. Has something that students are going to discover. So in other words, if they know everything in your unit of work before you even start that project, why bother doing that, right? So you have to know what your students are coming into your class with, what knowledge do they already have, and then we're creating topics from there. Content is necessitated, so they have to learn new things. We have an authentic audience, so they're making things for a purpose. Remember when we used to put stuff in our books and then it'd go into a teacher's bag and it'd go home and it'd come back again? No purpose behind that. But now we can make things for the internet for people to use. We can give them out to our school community. We can use them within the school community, within our classroom. So when we're making things for a purpose, students feel more engaged to the learning. Hands-on, but also minds-on. So busy work is hands-on, and hands-on is really good, but when we've got our minds on and we're thinking and we're making decisions and we're making conclusions from information, then we've got learning happening, and also relevant or interesting to the students. So pick stuff that's relevant. So at the moment, Moana, let's make some learning focused around Moana. Let's make some learning focused around Pokemon. Let's make learning focused around things that are really in context for those students. When we're differentiating, I'm going to skip this because we're going to go on to this in the future. And exhibiting work needs to be about authentic audience. So once a student's created something, say to yourself, so what? So how can I make this a public exhibition? How can I get parents to see this? How can I get the community around me to be part of this exhibition of student work? Now, this area of PBL may or may not be part of your first task. It will definitely be part of your second task. So start thinking in that space. Right. The next question you're going to answer for me. How does project-based learning prepare students for the 21st century workplace environment that we researched and discussed in our first module? So remember in our first week, we had a look at things like the 21st century learning report. We looked at the Horizon report. We looked at the future work skills. We looked at all sorts of things. Well, think of those and the discussions we had around what students need in their world and answer that for me. How does project-based learning prepare students for this 21st century workplace? So those two questions are to be answered in your report. All right, let's get on to our task for a minute. So where I want to go to now. So remember that all units of work for this task, all links for this task can be found via bit.ly/EDTS240. This is also linked from Leo. And you want to head into probably Module 3, which will have here PBL and games creation. And when you head into this space, this is where you're going to find activities for your assessment task. And you can find lots of fun things in here. So click on, for example, if we head to this Hour of Code suggestions page, you will find here a list of links for each of the subject areas. So if you wanted to have a look at how to train your robot, for example, it's going to take you out to a website to tell you how to run this activity in your classroom. It's also going to take you out to fantastic places like code.org. And code.org, if you haven't done anything on this site yet, straight away once this finishes, pop in and do something. So head into the Hour of Code and try doing Minecraft Hour of Code or Moana Hour of Code. Make a Flappy game, do the Star Wars game. These are all the types of coding that you're going to do in the K-6 environment. And this is a really good space to find some activities that may well fit your assignment. Another link, and of course these are all, remember, linked from our week Module 3, is Swift Playgrounds. This is an app on iPads and it is one of the coolest coding apps I've seen yet. It's a free app and stage 3, so year 5, 6, year 4 students absolutely love this. So if you do have an iPad, install this and have a little bit of a play. Something like the Hopscotch app is great for little ones to give them some basics and understanding of what we call block code or Blockly. I guess here I'm trying to show you that we've got a whole heap of resources we can get to. Ooh, another space here. There we go, is the Made with Code site. So when you come to Made with Code, click on the More Projects. And once you do that, you'll see there's a whole heap of really cool, I know it's a bit pink, but let's get through that gender stereotype and let's do this for boys and girls. So I reckon some of you should jump in and do this Code for Equality from the Hidden Figures activity. It's a really fun one. And you can make your own emojis and you can make this Yeti dance and you can hang into the Inside Out guys and play with them. Scratch is another, of course, this is a really popular game. My recommendation when you come to Scratch is to head into this Create space. And in the Create space, down the right-hand side, you'll see Getting Started with Scratch, Animate Your Name, Make It Fly, do one of these activities. So when you open the Getting Started, and then you see the step index, you can move your way through these and complete activities. So this is what we call block code, and this is the type of stuff that you're going to be teaching students and students love doing. Recently I taught year 7 and 8 students, and by the time they got to year 8, they're like, oh, no more Scratch, miss. but they know how to do it. Another site, so we've got the hourofcode.org. This Tinker Hour of Code activities has some really short ones, so the scavenger hunt is fun. Again, these are based on block code and you can create your own things. So don't forget, this site will give you some really good activities as well. You might like to have a look at the Minecraft Education Edition, get some good ideas from there. And then we've also put this activity, I've put this onto the Module 3 links for you. It's a little bit of a flow of learning that you could do to get ready for learning Scratch. So yourself, or to use in the stage, probably late stage 2, stage 3 area, then this would be helpful. So once again, to find links for your task 1, you're going to head into the modules. Remember these modules, and you've got these course links here. So click on the course links, it'll take you out to the site, and then head into, just give it a second to refresh, head into module 3 and 4. It's probably actually, I changed that, and there it is. Module 3, PBL and games creation, and you'll see a whole heap of ideas. Spend a lot of time in here and have a look at stuff. So that basically is a little bit of a wrap for Module 3 lecture. We've done a little bit of a scratch on, a little bit of an introduction to teaching technology, direct, guided and independent. We've had a look at TPAC as a way to frame and put a pedagogy, so a theory around teaching technology in this day and age. We've reminded ourselves what PBL is. We've had a look at some coding sites, and we know this is where we go. And you guys, over to you to answer these 2 questions in your portfolio. I'm just going to copy them and dump them now into the Leo site so that they're there for you. So come to Toots with a whole heap of questions for your assessment tasks, and let's make it happen. See you later.